One. Hello, greetings, everyone. This is your friend, your host, your coach, Payman Lorenzo. And today, I have another wonderful new friends of mine connected to one of my best friends I met to the podcast of the last few months, Debra Blackman. This gentleman right here, Mr. Trevor Gordon, fellow football enthusiast, just like me. We had a beautiful conversation about football. Is a diehard, lifelong Manchester United, and me, Milan fan. So we talked and about how the game evolved. We're gonna do another podcast in the future, just talking about the evolution of football because that's a fascinating topic that me and him we can talk for a long time. But today I'm really delighted to have him here because we had a beautiful chat about 2 weeks ago, and I found out about him. And as soon as we talked, I knew that I had to bring him in because of not only his story, but also what he's doing right now, the impact he's having in the world, and how he's making the world a better place. Just a little bit about him, and of course, he's gonna tell us more about his background. So he's currently based in London, UK. As you can see, today London is blessed with sun and first the taste of I don't know if it's late spring or early summer, but in between. And yeah, and he's a professional, he's a leader in the field of teaching equality, diversity from the legal perspective, focused on DEI. He has a background in law and legal, and he was also teaching. He started when he got into law, he realized that's not a field for him, and it transitioned into teaching law as opposed to practicing law. And this is what he's been doing. He's been around the world. He's been working in the Middle East and Saudi Arabia. Now he's back in London in the UK. And who knows where he's going to go next? Maybe in the moon, Mars, Jupiter, Andromeda. Who knows? You know, yeah, so the sky is the limit. I'm really excited to have him here. Trevor, my friend, welcome to the show.
Oh, Lorenzo, thank you so much. And it is a blessing and an honor, really is to be with you today. And thank you so much. Yeah.
Pleasure's all mine, my friend. Pleasure's all mine. So first of all, tell us, we're gonna talk about your business, your impact, and everything you're doing on later on in this conversation. But for people who don't know you, tell us, who's Trevor as a person, as a human being, and as a man?
Okay. Trevor is someone who, because of my upbringing, because of my journey, um, it's impacted deeply on me as a man who happens to be black. I'm not a black man. I'm a man who happens to be black. It's about what you see. It's about perception. And in the way that you are a man, Lorenzo, who happens to be white, what I see first is the qualities of a man. Color has oh, forgive me, they're testing the alarm. Sod's law, it'll stop in a minute. Oh my God.
No worries.
That's what makes it all real. That's what makes it so real.
Absolutely. Charm of life.
I'm so sorry. I'm absolutely certain it's just a... There you go. It was just a test. That's what makes podcasts so real. I hope that got a negative effect on it, but
absolutely not.
But yeah. So to continue, it's about what you see. It's about subject versus object. So I define myself as a man who happens to be black. I acknowledge my blackness. It's a strength, not a weakness. I originally from the Caribbean. I come from an extremely deprived background, essentially what you would call a dysfunctional family. I've managed to achieve what I have in life in spite of what I've been through, not because of what I've been through. And it's made me the character that I am today. I have a huge moral compass, and that is affected A, by my faith, and B, again, just by my worldview, what I've seen, what I've experienced as somebody who is passionate about justice, passionate about equality, passionate about judgments that we make that are based in stereotypic, biased assumptions that hold no water. And that really did motivate me in my early years to seek who I am and what I am. I was very confused growing up in England as a black a young black man. I was
How
born in
old were
19.
you? Sorry, how old were you when you moved to England, or were you born
I
in?
was my parents brought me here at the age of 2.
Oh, okay.
So I was, the original Windrush generation. I turned up in 1961. And just to give you an example, when I started primary school, my first day, I had one little boy asked to see my tail. I had another little girl rub my skin because her mum told me that if you rub it, it comes off. It's dirt. It's
Holy
dirt.
wow.
And I sat in the playground while 3 or 4 children just messed with my hair, my crinkly hair. Um, I suffered some appalling racism as a child, which at the time I couldn't contextualize. When you're 5 or 6, you can't really contextualize racism.
Especially back then, because it wasn't common to see people of color or whatever other backgrounds. It's not like nowadays.
Not like exactly. It was incredible. I was that first generation to come in and have people spit at you,
Oh,
people move when you sat on a bus, just really treated in a massively derogatory way.
that's awful.
But it strengthened me, and it gave me a certain resilience that I've carried through today, and I've ensured that my children have as well. It's about resilience.
Mm.
Resilience is the ability to deal with something that you can't change. And I've spent a lifetime dedicated to not just eradicating racism, but every form of discrimination. I have 3 daughters and 3 granddaughters. Sexism for me, discrimination against the disabled, discrimination against your sexuality, are all no-nos. Class-based discrimination, cultural discrimination, or the whole gambit I commit to. So I'm not a race expert per se. I am an expert on across the piece in terms of harassment, discrimination, victimization, bullying, and I've just decided. I grew up watching black and white television with 3 channels, and I used to love watching Perry Mason and Ironside. They were lawyers, detectives, and I Spy, I just had this vision. I wanted to be a lawyer. I wanted to go into court and win things for people and be a kind of an advocate hero.
Fight for justice.
Absolutely, and just wanted to do justice because I just love justice, because I think by that time the injustices that I'd suffered
Are
growing
you a
up had been
Libra by any chance?
no, I'm a Taurian.
Oh,
Yeah,
yes, yes, yes. Okay. Good,
I'm a
good.
Taurian.
All
So
right.
and I have typically Taurian traits. I'm single-minded. When I focus my mind on doing something, it gets done.
Mm.
And yeah, so coming up, my upbringing very influenced by my upbringing. My school, my clothes to go to school came from a big warehouse of secondhand clothes. Because of my dysfunctional family, my mother and my father. My mother came from a rich family. My father came from a poor family. They ran away together. And as much as they loved each other, it was a marriage made in hell because it just didn't work. And my brother and I suffered quite badly because of it. They ran away to England without having any idea of the consequences of being newly arrived black immigrants into the motherland that really wasn't accepting at that particular time. So yeah, I didn't do too well at school because I was rebellious. I wanted to learn, but the teachers didn't really want to teach us. 1,600 boys, big in a city school. It was more about containing us than teaching us. So, so long as we were contained and we didn't destroy the classroom, that was a good day. They didn't want to teach us anything. I was told, you don't need to be good at maths, you don't need to be good at English because your people are good with their hands. So, go to woodwork, go to metalwork. That's what I was encouraged. I watched a whole generation of talented, gifted black boys destroyed. and told, when you're told that you're dysfunctional, when you're told that you have a criminal tendency, when you're told you'll amount to nothing, you buy in. And I watched a lot of them buy in, and I watched some of the most intelligent young men from the age of 11 to 15 just have their lives destroyed. If you think I'm a gangster, I'll be a gangster. You know, if you think I'm dysfunctional, hey, I'll be dysfunctional. You know, I'll be the label. And back then we didn't have any role models. There were no black bankers, there were no black lawyers, there were no black, it wasn't black anything that you could aspire to. And I believe that if you can't see it when you're growing up as a child, it's hard to aspire to, you know. And that's always been a big thing of mine in the early days in the work that I did. So yeah, it was tough. The 60s and the 70s were tough. I left school, had to get a job to survive, and started working, was intelligent. I left school with some O levels and an A level, met my wife, we had children, and I had to work to provide for my family. I had a job as a policy officer for the London Borough of Lewisham, and because I was intelligent, I could write, you know, I wasn't dumb. I just hadn't had the opportunity to be properly educated. And the biggest change in my life was when I was told, I was in a meeting with the CEO and the head of the policy unit and a few other people. And we were talking, there was a big debate. And I put my hand up to speak. And my superior looked at me and said, "You can put your hand down, Trevor, because you're not qualified to speak." And that broke me. I got up and I left the meeting, and I went into the men's toilets and I cried my eyes out. And then about 2 weeks after that, I told my wife I'm going to enroll at university as an adult learner. And I apologized to her because I said, she and the children, you're about to have to go on to the breadline, because I can't go on in life anymore without being educated, because I will not be told again that I'm not qualified to speak. So South Bank University, who I'm now an alumni for and who I now do work with, I chair their sixth form college. I chair the South Bank University sixth form college, and I'm heavily involved in that university because it's the university in England that has the biggest rate of adults returning. It has a reputation for people like me who the system failed, reaching out and saying, have a second chance. So it gave me a second chance, and I never looked back. I did my BSc, I did my MSc, my legal qualifications, and I never looked back. And yeah, 7 years, we struggled as a family, but once I qualified, I made it up to them over the past 40 years. You know, I got into law, didn't like it. I didn't like lawyers. I just didn't like the profession. It was narcissistic, sexist, racist, incredibly colonialistic attitude. The legal professions, not all of them, some of them are okay.
You know how we call lawyers in Canada?
No, what? No, yeah.
We call them liars. Oh, you're a
I
liar. Okay. What field do you specialize in? Okay.
They absolutely, yeah. I absolutely met a lot like that. But what I
Mhm.
didn't like was being pigeonholed. Oh, let me introduce you to Trevor. He's our new black lawyer. Oh,
Oh,
Trevor,
no,
we've got a
seriously?
black
Wow.
client. Oh, Trevor. They wanted me to do all the black stuff, you know, and then, oh, you've got to do criminal law, Trevor, because you're black. And I thought, why? Why
What?
have I got? Yeah, some of the stuff, Lorenzo, was
Seriously?
like,
Wow.
unreal. Yeah. And I'd go home and I'd sit down depressed and thought, there goes my bubble. But I had a wonderful professor, a South American professor, Rojas, Robinson Rojas, who said, Trev, you know, I wanted to tell you, but I didn't want to break your heart, but the legal professions in the UK are incredibly racist and you're going to get pigeonholed. You know, so but you're an incredibly intelligent man. Why don't you teach? Teach law.
Mm.
Uh, Teaching is a good profession. And I said, well, yeah, went home and discussed it with my wife. So I decided to teach. I got
Oh, what about,
into,
sorry, Trevor, what about starting your own legal firm? So you run the show, no one
um,
telling you what to do when you.
I had considered that, but the legal professions are a closed shop.
Mm,
And you're not going to go off and set up a law firm and succeed without the industry embracing you. And it wouldn't. It would just blackball you.
especially
Nobody would
back
use
then.
you.
Yeah,
Back then. It just wasn't. I didn't know of any, I knew of one black barrister back then. There are a lot now. Things have changed. But I knew of one black barrister back then, and there are a handful of solicitors. And they suffered tremendous abuse. And stress in order to fulfill what was
mm.
their ambitions. Yeah. So
Wow.
I'm also conscious I'm doing a lot of talking around. I want to give you a chance
No,
to
no,
ask questions.
fascinating. Thank you. Love that. We're going to expand all of that. And I'm sure we can do an entire episode of each phase, each chapter of those moments of your life because they're really fascinating. But first of all, I'd like to, what I usually do after the quick introduction, I'd like to ask a series of rapid fire questions to further get to know you as a person and a human being. Ready?
Yeah.
All right. Tell us, what makes you happy as a person?
Um, what makes me happy as a person? My family, my children, my grandchildren,
Mm.
and my wife made me very happy.
Oh, yes.
Unfortunately, I died to cancer.
Oh, so sorry to hear
So
it.
yeah, no, it's no problem. My personal life stability means a lot to me because
Mm,
my work was massively chaotic, and that means a lot to me. Um, Having somebody I can talk to, share my day with, somebody who understands me and what I do, and that I'm not necessarily. I've earned, I've done well, but at the end of the day, I'm not being driven by money. I have a moral compass, and integrity is everything for me, Lorenzo. I won't give it up
absolutely.
for anybody,
Non-negotiable. Yeah.
non-negotiable. So yeah, that's really and what the biggest buzz I get is my integrity. I've never sold it out. I've never sold out. I've never ever sold out
God
for
bless your heart.
the system, to the money. I've walked away from huge sums of money. I've done things that people have said I'm crazy, but I don't want to be bought. I'm a product of transatlantic slavery. I don't want to be bought. I can't be bought, and I will keep my integrity. I have a philosophy, Lorenzo, that you can take everything from a human being. You can beat them, you can rape them, you can enslave them, you can take everything from a human being, but your integrity has to be given away. They can't take that.
Yeah.
You have to give that up. And I always remembered that you can do all of this stuff to me, but you're not getting my integrity because integrity has to be given away. And I've seen so many people give it away, and I've never done it. And Lorenzo, that's the thing I'm proudest of. I've stood
Indeed.
firm. I've stood on my rock, and I feel very proud of the fact that I've never sold out. I've never given in or caved into material pressures. Yeah.
Beautiful. You mentioned your rock. What was your rock and your toughest moments that allowed you to maintain and preserve your integrity?
Um, the toughest moments for me were when I was ambitious, and I got into education. I wanted to be a principal, a college principal, and I embarked on that particular road. And the toughest moments for me were the racism and being told that I'm over aspiring. I shouldn't aspire to principalship. Um, you know, it's far, far way too above you, and
Are you not
um,
qualified? That's the worst.
they couldn't tell me that at that time. So they'd find every other excuse because
So
I.
when they told you you're not qualified, was that because you didn't have the academic credential, or just because of
Yeah,
your color?
I didn't have academic credentials, so I wasn't qualified to speak.
Okay.
So, and that's why I said I put my wife and my daughters through 7 years of poverty to become educated. Because, um, you know, but the one thing I learned, Lorenzo, about being educated is there's only one thing racists fear more than an
Knowledge.
uneducated black man.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Is an educated black man.
Are successful. Yes.
Yeah. So it didn't change racism, it just changed the dynamic. Because now I wasn't educated. So they couldn't say, oh, he's dumb or he's stupid or he's not educated.
So as you rose up in your career, you became more established and more successful.
Yeah.
Did you, how did you notice the racism, the level of racism change, increase, amplify, or
Yeah.
subside, or?
It just got worse and worse. And I
Oh,
would spend most of my day taking knives out of my back.
oh,
You know, at the peak of my career, I was in a college with 27,000 learners. I managed 40% of the curriculum. I was the deputy CEO. I was the deputy principal. I had a huge budget. In Saudi Arabia, my 5-year budget was 125 million US dollars. I can manage. I'm a good manager. If you see a manager that happens to be black, but if you see a black manager, that's always been the problem. I will say it. There are an awful lot of white people who really don't want somebody like me being their boss. They
sure.
resent it, and I took a lot of resentment for that. And I had a situation that happened, and it was a big situation in the sector because I was one of the leading lights. You know, I was pushed and encouraged, and all sorts of people got involved and said, yes, we've got to have black principals and Trevor. So I was at the forefront of opening the door. And I became disillusioned because I saw black people become principals and sell their integrity. A
Mm,
lot of them sold their integrity. That's how they made it. I'm not doing it. I'm not selling my integrity. They compromised themselves, and I was asked to compromise myself. I was asked to stitch a member of, for want of a better word, stitch a manager up so that me and my superiors didn't look bad. So I was to plant stuff and do all sorts of really bad stuff to a wonderful manager who had a family and children and who didn't deserve to be stitched up. And I refused. And I was told either to do the stitch up or to resign. So I resigned
of course.
and gave up a really, really good career. The next step for me was principal CEO of a large college, and I resigned. I couldn't do it. I can't do that.
Of course.
I can't frame somebody up. I was framed at the age of 18. I can't
Of
do it.
course.
When I was
It's a death
18, I got a job.
sentence. It's
Yeah.
akin to a death sentence for someone, especially someone who has already enough
Mm.
obstacles in the past, especially if it's a black or minority, that amplifies it even worse.
Exactly. Well, I have a passion for some things. I have a passion for watches and I have a passion for shoes. Number one, because I didn't have a lot of shoes growing up, so I've got a passion for shoes. And number two, I had a passion for watches. I just love watches. I got a job for Watches of Switzerland in London's West End
Wow.
when I was 18, and it was a part-time job, but I got a job there. First black man ever to work for Watches of Switzerland. We're talking top end watches, Rolexes, you know, Petit Philippe. We're talking top end watches.
Mm-hmm.
I went there on the Monday, did the day. Anyway, I went in on the Tuesday morning and I saw just a wall of looks. And I was called up to head office in Bond Street on Tuesday morning. Said, you've got to go straight to head office. And I walked in and I sat down with what must be one of the directors. And he sat me down. He said, Trevor, don't know how to say this, but £6,000 worth of watches went missing yesterday. And it was your first day at work, and we have to question you. And my response, this is serious, and my response, I'll give you the story. This is why I could not stitch this woman up. And this was at 18. And I looked at him and I said, do you think on my first day as a young black man, I would be stupid enough to put £6,000 worth of watches in my pocket and leave on my first day? And he looked at me across the table and he said, I do struggle with it, because no, Trevor, I don't think anybody with a reasonable brain would do that on their first day. However, the watches are gone and the other staff there are established and we don't know what to do. I said, well, all I can tell you is I did not take those watches. And he told me to sit outside the office, and I sat out there for 3 hours while they debated what to do with me. They called me back in and they said, Trevor, we're not going to press charges against you. We're not going to involve the police. But unfortunately, we're going to dismiss you. We've got to put you on a blacklist. Because in the jewelry industry, because they're considered to be a jeweler, there's a blacklist of, so no jeweler or no high-end merchandising company would employ me. So they said, we're going to put you on a blacklist. And that was it. And I went home and sat down and cried my eyes out. There's nothing I could do. I was just a black boy. I had no money. I couldn't go to a lawyer. I couldn't do anything.
Didn't have cameras in the store?
No, we're talking back then. There were no. Actually, there were cameras covering the door areas, but there weren't really, we didn't have that level of sophistication. I'm talking about 18, so I'm talking about 1977. We're talking 1977, where that level of sophistication, I mean.
Do you think you were framed?
Well, I'm going to finish the story.
Yes.
So I was blacklisted, and 14 months later, there was a knock on my door, and it was a police officer from the CID. And he said to me, Trevor Gordon, I said, yes. He said, could we talk to you? I said, yes. Did you work for Watches of Switzerland at this particular time? I said, yes. He said, well, one of the stolen watches has turned up, and we've traced it back to the assistant manager. So, and they said that we need to inform you because we understand that you were, we've spoken to Watches of Switzerland, and they said at the time you were considered to be the culprit, but they didn't take action. And we've come to inform you, and we want to know if you want to take any action against the assistant manager. And I said, well, what has happened to him? He said, well, we've charged him because he sold the watch to somebody in a pub. That person was arrested. Then they traced the serial number for the watch. So yeah, that's what happened. And I went up to see Watches of Switzerland, and they offered me £4,000 compensation. And I refused the money. I said, because what you're now doing is buying me. You've done me a huge injustice, but you now want to buy me. Now, £4,000 back then was a phenomenal sum of money.
Sure, even today, it's a tidy sum.
Tidy sum. So I said, I'm not taking your money, but I'm going downstairs into the showroom and I'm taking a watch. And they said, are you serious? I said, I'm absolutely serious. And that's when I went and got my first decent watch. And I went downstairs and I picked out a watch. And it wasn't worth 4,000. I think it's worth 2,500, 3,000. I said, I want that. And they said, well, we'll have to work, they had a debate, and they said, okay, have it. I took it and I left.
So you took the 4,000 they were about to offer you in exchange, you got a watch.
Yeah.
Okay, that's a good.
Take the money. I didn't want to be bought. I didn't want to be bought. They were buying me.
Yeah.
I'm sitting there. There was no guilt. There was no remorse. There was nowhere sorry, Trevor.
Of course.
There was just, oh, it's a bit of a bad situation. Yeah, we sacked you. We blacklisted you. Now they've caught the manager.
Did they try to offer you a new your position back?
No, there was no offer of a position.
And if they had, would you have accepted it?
No. I say all of that to say that when I was then deputy principal and I was asked to do the same to a middle-class white woman who did nothing wrong, stitch her up. I said no. And so I gave in I resigned. I gave my resignation. It caused a big stink. You know, all sorts of people got involved, financial, Times Educational Supplement, and all sorts of people got involved because they wanted to know what happened. It was my word against my CEO's word, so it's a black man's word against a middle-class white woman's word.
Mm-hmm.
And I went home, and I thought my career was over. But then my wife had suggested to me that I'm a very, very good consultant, and I do it with a passion. And a few people had called up and asked me to do consultancy. So once I'd had my pity party, which you have, nobody came, I decided to dust myself off. And then I set up Gordon French Associates Limited. And God bless my company. In the first year, I made 164,000. And I never looked back. I dedicate my life now to equality, diversity, inclusion, to taking on the sexist, the racist, the misogynist, the people who don't give disabled people an opportunity, the people who just like to judge. And I spent a career doing that, and I positively loved it.
Yeah,
I could have made a lot more money doing other things, but
sure.
I loved my career. I was able to educate my children. I was able to give my wife all the things that she deserved to have because she supported me, gave me bus fare to go to uni. So I was able to repay it, and you know, I have three wonderful daughters, one of whom has a disability. That also inspired me as well. Having a child who has a disability, albeit it's not visible, and going through that process as well of growing up a daughter with a very severe heart condition, it really did impact on me as well. So that's
Mm-hmm.
that's.
Did you, by any chance, get in touch with Drusilla?
I did, yeah, I
Did you
did.
guys talk?
I've reached out, and
Oh,
I like all she posts regularly. I'm hoping that at some stage we will reach
she's
out. We will,
she has an
it,
incredible goosebump inducing story. I'm not gonna say it. I want
right,
her to say it. Incredible story.
right. ED and I in the States is quite different from ED and I here.
Mm.
And the Black experience in the UK is not the Black experience in America.
How do you
And
think
that's,
it's different from in the UK versus the US?
well, for a start, in the US, uh, the racism that African Americans have suffered is completely, it's a different kind of racism. We all suffered transatlantic slavery, but I was in the Caribbean. So I grew up in the Caribbean, and then I haven't been in England for 200 years. My people haven't been here for 200 years, whereas African Americans have. When we came here, we were not segregated. I didn't live in a black neighborhood in London. In England, we haven't done that. We have neighborhoods that are predominantly Asian or predominantly black. But I grew up in neighborhoods where I had a white neighbor, a Scottish neighbor, an Irish neighbor. And I remember when the Irish were treated as bad as we were. You know, I remember seeing signs that said, rooms to rent, no Irish, no blacks, no dogs.
Wow.
So I remember those days. So that's, again, quintessentially, that's how I grew up. And that has also informed my thinking and my practice. Yeah, yeah,
Wow. Okay.
yeah. So yeah, it's been an interesting walk.
Yeah.
It's a different world now. I mean, I've got two daughters who both went in the legal professions, albeit they don't practice law, but they work in the support side of the legal professions. One is a project manager about to become a project director, and the other one does marketing from a legal perspective. So I'm quite proud that two of my daughters have gone through the glass ceiling. But yeah, it has been a
Well,
tough road.
they've had a phenomenal role model to aspire to, so that helps. You've paved the way for them. You're a pioneer.
Thank you,
And
thank you.
no,
Yeah,
seriously, and this is not a compliment. This is an observation, and you worked hard. You were
thank
you are an inspiration not only for your children, for your family, but other people
Mhm.
around you, and now people around the world.
That's right. And as I said, between America and here, I don't have a history of lynchings. You know,
Mm,
when slavery ended in the Caribbean, we were poor. The Caribbean was poor, but we didn't have Jim Crow law. We didn't have the 13th Amendment, which abolished slavery but didn't abolish slavery.
mm,
There's a blog in my website on the 13th Amendment, which is the biggest crock that you'd ever want to see. We abolish slavery, but we allow involuntary servitude. Involuntary servitude is slavery. Involuntary servitude in the 13th Amendment, where that slavery was abolished, says we're abolishing slavery, but if you put somebody in prison, you can work them for free.
mm.
So that's what happened in America. They incarcerated 4 million black men because if they're in jail, you can work them for free. So they just shifted slavery. They just shifted it to the prison service, which is why, you know, the vast majority of prisoners in the American penal system are black and they're not paid. In the UK, in most countries, if you go to jail and you work, you receive a wage, even if it's a minimal wage, not in America. And so
Right.
industry shifted to, and a lot of people don't know that history. You know, they think, oh, slavery was about, no, it wasn't. They brought out involuntary servitude. They'd lock a black man up for loitering on the corner. And also, once convicted, you lost the right to vote. So again, you disenfranchise an entire population from being able to
Mm.
exercise a vote in the democratic process. That's why I say America is mess. It's seriously a mess. I didn't experience any of that. I mean, when I was young, growing up, a police officer hit me, I hit him back. You know, they didn't have guns in England. We didn't take it. We weren't having it. So I didn't take that rubbish. You know,
Of course.
and I told the judge, you know, why did you assault this police officer? Because he assaulted me. You know,
Self-defense,
um,
yeah.
self-defense, and it's the one conviction that I got. And I don't deny it and I don't hide it. I will stand up if you hit me. I won't hit you back straight away, but if you're going to continue to hit me, then I will defend myself. And that was the situation. He didn't just hit me once. You know, he hit me once and saw that I didn't respond, and then he wanted to hit me again and again, and that's just I'm not having.
So in the US, they add the very extreme groups like, say, the KKK and
I,
Blade.
I never I never suffered any of that. I don't have that's not my history. So I want to be very clear to people that transatlantic slavery impacted many parts of the world. The Caribbean and the Americas had two different kinds of slavery. I had a pen system. They had a plantation system.
Mm,
That is why Caribbeans retained their African patois. That's why we retained a lot of our Africanness. Jamaicans have a lot of their Africanness. Americans had it all whipped out of them. No accents, no, they had it all beaten out of them.
yeah,
I haven't got time to explain it now, but it'd be nice one day to do a podcast. People need to understand history in its full context. People say Jamaicans are very rebellious. Yes, we are. It's because we didn't have a plantation system. We had a pen system. We didn't spend our days on a plantation at night. We were allowed to go into a place called a pen where we could associate. And that's how that was. It was about the economy. They couldn't afford to keep us on plantations. We had to cook our own food, make our own clothes, look after our own children, because they didn't have the economies of scale in the Caribbean, and also had to import everything. So, you know, economically, we are. I am very different to an African American and their history.
sure.
So, and so, you know, my history of the United Kingdom colonizing Jamaica, me being taken from Africa to Jamaica, and then leaving Jamaica to come to the motherland. That experience African Americans never had, and the
Mm,
worst experience of racism on the planet that I've ever documented, witnessed, or researched is the African American experience.
yeah.
So back to your colleague, I wish her well. I support her in her endeavors. Um,
Yes.
there's a terrible racist underbelly in America, terrible racist underbelly. Um, and I hope that the country eventually comes to terms with the fact that, you know, African Americans built the United States.
Absolutely. There's a
You know?
beautiful, very touching and sad movie called The Green Book.
Oh,
I,
I've watched it recently. It was
I
fantastic.
love that. It made me cry.
It touched me also.
Yeah.
Fantastic actors, and a true story. and an
Yes.
absolute story,
Yes.
you know, not just about racism, but also about sexuality,
Yes.
about Jim Crow, about the nature of the human condition, that a black man could not be a doctor of music and a doctor of philosophy and have traveled, a learned man. It was a wonderful film, and I'll watch it again in a year's time, because that's what I do. I watch them, and the ones I love, I
Sure.
watch again.
For me, the worst part was when he was invited to perform at those banquet halls, yet he was not
Yeah,
allowed to eat there.
yeah. Oh, absolutely. And I mean, you know, Michael Jackson suffered that.
Oh,
I mean,
yeah.
this is how recent it is. I mean, the Green Mile, we're talking about the 50s.
Yeah.
But Michael Jackson, I was recently reminded, having went to the theatre to see the Michael Jackson play for a birthday gift, I was recently reminded in the 70s, the Jackson 5 suffered that. James Brown,
I did not know that the Jackson
actually,
5 and Michael Jackson
yeah,
suffered
yeah,
racism. I didn't
absolutely,
know that.
absolutely,
Okay.
absolutely. You know, they were the 60s. They came out during the late 60s.
Yeah.
So they suffered all of that, and we forget that. Aretha Franklin, Stevie Wonder,
Oh,
all of
yeah.
these all suffered Jim Crow segregation. It wasn't until the mid-70s, really, that African Americans were integrated, if you still want to call it integration. I had a house in Atlanta for 12 years, and because I just felt Atlanta, it's a black city run by black people, more black millionaires than anywhere else in the world, and I could afford it, and I wanted a second home, and I bought it in Atlanta. And my wife and I, we had a home in Atlanta for 12 years. My children loved it. But again, when I bought my house, my neighborhood was half white, half black. 12 years down the line, it was all black. I don't want to live in a country where all the black people live in one place and all the Italian people live in one place and all the
Yeah.
Chinese people live in. I don't want to live in that country, because that tells me there's something fundamentally wrong with that country.
Yeah. Big time.
And so I sold the house after my wife passed away. But I still have links. I go to America every year for 3 months. I love the African American experience. I recently visited a plantation museum. They've now got
Oh,
plantation museums. In Louisiana, my sister took me to a plantation in Louisiana where I got a real insight as to what
when
the
did
whole
they close Plantation in the US?
story.
When did they completely, banned and
Technically,
closed?
the Civil War, which was 1865, technically,
Mm,
is
okay.
when slavery was abolished. But they didn't, as I said, they compromised. So they
Mm,
abolished slavery, but they allowed involuntary servitude. So involuntary servitude is you're in prison. Because you're in prison, we can work you. That's why you see the chain gangs working on farms, digging roads for the local
bills, yeah.
authority,
Mm-hmm.
building. They were used and they were not paid. So slavery was quite simply shifted to the penal institutions in the United States. And people have always wondered, people have got to ask themselves, do you really think a whole nation of black people coming out of slavery could just become criminally minded? What does common sense tell you? Why was it that after slavery, 4 million black men ended up in prison?
And
It
then
was
not
because
giving them access to education to keep them low
not
on
giving them,
purpose, so
and
they
then
can
you wonder why
perpetuate
the
this
black
image. Yeah.
family, exactly. And then they wonder why the black family in America is dysfunctional, because there are no men. And that's why the black women in America are so strong.
They have to step up. They have to do the work
They
of
have to
being the
step up.
father and the mother.
Absolutely. They had to be the father and the mother because of the injustices. You could be sent to prison for standing on a street corner as a
Still
black
to this
male.
day.
Not to this day, but back then. Because anything that they could do to get it was called loitering with intent. And black men could get up to 2 years. And then what they did is once they got you in the system, they did everything to keep you in the system. So you'd get a 2-year sentence, you'd end up punching a guard because he wanted to rape you, and then they'd give you 10 years for punching the guard. It was all about the economy, and we
Free labor.
still want It was all about free labor. And, you know, you see it in all of the films, all the chain gangs, and they're beating the stuff, and that you rent them to farmers. A lot of industry, McDonald's, IBM, so many industries use prison pop. They don't anymore because it's not trendy, it's not hip. You know, oh, we can't be
Not
using
politically
prisoners.
correct.
Not politically correct anymore. But when you actually look at the history, they all got involved in it. All of them got involved in it. You know, making number plates, you know, which was a big one. So yeah, when you really look at the history of America and you unpack it, terrible, absolutely terrible. But yeah, and it was very much about involuntary servitude, which in the UK, if you're in prison in the United Kingdom, you have to be paid for the work that you do. Now, you might not be paid much. It's more of the principle. You cannot be worked for free. There is
How
a
much is the
principle.
minimum wage currently in the UK?
The minimum wage in the UK, I think it's just gone up to about just over £11, if I remember rightly. My accountant sends it through every year to my company. It's about £11 something, which
How
is
much do they
great.
pay? How
But
much do they pay inmates, for example?
an inmate can possibly earn £2 or £3 a day.
Wow, that's nothing. A day.
No, it's more a payment in principle. It's not to give them a wage. It's a payment in principle. It's to say, we can't work you for free because that's slavery. By any definition of slavery, slavery is, by its very definition, incarceration and free labor. Because if you are a slave, you are incarcerated. You don't have any freedom. And we work you for nothing. That, by its very definition, is slavery. A sex slave. We have sex slavery now. By its very definition, they're not free, and they are, you know, being used for sex, and they are not receiving any of the remuneration.
Mm-hmm.
But by its very definition, slavery is incarceration followed by you labor for free, whether it's flat on your back, cutting cane, growing rice. So the definition of involuntary servitude is it's slavery by any other name.
Wow.
So yeah, America's got a long way to go. And no, it's changed a lot. But you know, there is a legacy now of there are still far too many black males in the American penal system. And many of them are disenfranchised and can't vote, which is why, you know, the Republicans are very happy. They have historically always wanted to incarcerate because it means black people can't vote, you know, or be Democrats. But again, America, it's, you know, Democrat or Republican. Nobody seems to be making much of a difference.
So is racial profiling as much of an issue in the UK than it is in the US?
Oh, definitely, yeah. Oh, absolutely, yeah. But it just shifts, you know. At the moment, they're targeting Muslim youth more than, you know. I grew up and they targeted us, black youth. You know, the cult devil just shifts. Now it's Islamophobia, it's terrorism, it's Muslims. So, you know, they now spend a lot of time targeting Islamic youth. But they're, you know, you will always have gender profiling, racial profiling, disability profiling. It's a part of the unconscious bias of those people who justify their behavior. They justify it through profiling.
And US, you live in unfortunate Canada, is not uncommon. Say, let's say you're a young black man, you're driving a nice car, you're getting stopped for no reason. Let's say you're walking on the street, you're eating in a nice place, dressed well, they come up to you. What are you doing? Give me your ID.
Yeah, there's still a lot of that taking place in the UK. A lot of the younger generation are stopped and searched. I worked for the National College of Policing for 12 years, and I was privileged to work with senior management, senior police officers from chief superintendent and above at their national colleges, and did a lot of work in the EDI space on their EDI programs. And I'm pleased to say that as much as the British police force is institutionally racist, I'm pleased to say that efforts have been made to improve that. What you tend to find is that senior management within the police ranks do take misogyny and sexism and racism quite seriously. It's the newbies who come in who want to prove themselves. They're the ones who
They have a chip on the
are,
shoulder, especially the ones that are
yeah,
uneducated.
exactly. And it's the same in
Power.
America. Yeah, it's the power thing. It's the uniform. It's that paramilitary power trip that a lot of them get on. And so that's what I found. I found when I worked with rank and file police officers, it was awful. But once I worked with chief superintendents and above, we could make some progress. But it just doesn't seem to filter down. You know, it starts at the top with the commissioners and it filters down, and then it stops, and then you just get this proliferation of very,
Does the
very
police
horrible
carry
people.
guns in the UK?
No, and that's another reason why we treat them the way we do. They do now. We have a lot more armed police, but the probability of me being shot is incredibly slim. The probability of me being stopped and a police officer drawing a gun on me is incredibly slim. They'd have to believe that I have a gun, and it would have to be the, you know, that particular section of the police force, the armed response units, that would carry weapons. And I think that's still what makes England great. The fact that rank and file police do still not carry firearms is what makes this country great. You know, when I was a kid, we used to play a game. We used to find a police officer, and then we used to run and knock his hat off and run away. You couldn't do that in America because you get shot. But
No,
we
yeah,
used to do
no.
that. We used to nick their hats, knock them off and nick their hats and run away because they couldn't chase us. They weren't fast enough. And that was a game we played. So that just shows the difference. I've been stopped. I've had police officers, you know, stitch me up, you know, stop me for traffic offences I didn't commit. It's part and parcel of being black. But what I do know now is that how they profile in the UK is that my registration plate and my car is known to the police, and they will ethnically profile the driver. So they will, you know, drive behind you, look at your number plate, and then the number plate flags up, and I'm either a pear or an orange or an apple, and that's either white or Asian or black. And so they see a black man driving that car, they say, no, he's legal. So they don't stop us as much as they do because of this racial profiling that they say they don't do, but they do. So we don't get stopped as much, you know. The police know that a black man owns my car, put it that way. So if they see a black man driving it, they're not going to stop me and think it's stolen.
Wow.
It's subtle profiling, but they do it. They say they don't, but they do. Yeah.
So in the UK, is it legal to buy and carry guns?
No, it isn't, and I'm pleased that it isn't, and it shouldn't be legal. And one of the world's biggest problems are guns. And you know, guns don't kill people; people kill people. So if people
Yes.
don't have guns, then guns can't be dangerous. You know, we have a knife problem in the UK. Youngsters are equipping themselves with some awful knives, and we're getting a lot of knife stabbings. And a knife is as dangerous as a gun. You know.
Anything can be dangerous. A car,
Oh,
this
absolutely.
coffee mug can be dangerous if used the wrong
Coffee
way.
mug, a chair, a spoon. I mean,
Everything. A pen. Yeah.
a pen,
Maybe this
anything.
dice. You put it in someone's throat, close it,
Yeah,
and
anything in the right hands. Anything in the right hands with a person who's determined
in
to
the wrong
use it.
hands. Yes.
Yeah, in the wrong hands. So no, I'm pleased that we're not an openly a firearm society. It's the one thing that attracts me to the UK and keeps me in the UK. I go to America for 3 months every year. My brother-in-law's a state trooper. I've learned to shoot. I know how to handle a firearm. It's not a toy. It's something that you need to learn to use. It's something that you need to respect. And it's something that you use in defense. And I've learned that, and I can use a firearm well. I can shoot well. But I was taught that by my brother-in-law so that I could protect myself in the United States against anybody that wanted to shoot me first. I don't go around America carrying a gun, but I understand the gun culture. And I understand why so many people have a gun. It is because so many other people have a gun. It's a spiral.
Why do you think the US has such a big obsession with guns and carrying guns?
I think their history is a part of that. I think the First Amendment, the right to carry arms. America, they wouldn't have conquered the West. They wouldn't have annihilated the Native Americans, the indigenous Americans. They wouldn't have been able to keep us enslaved. There were there were the ratio of blacks to whites in America was 1 to 8 in 1898.
Wow.
So without the gun, European settlers could not have conquered America, could not have settled America, and there would not be a United States of America if not for the gun. So America's history is the history of the gun.
Do you think, is it even feasible either in the near future for America to change policies and drop the gun culture?
It's always feasible, but it will never happen because too many Americans like owning guns. It is their constitutional right. They will never change the First Amendment Constitution. You will always have the right to bear arms. It's not going to change. It's just as simple as that. I believe that any society can change, but you'll see no democratic government is going to take the action required. I mean, just look at the killings in America. You know,
So I'm
kids
about to say,
walking.
how many will it take for people to say enough is enough?
We've had enough is enough, and they're still not going to change. You know, when a gunman can go into a hotel room in Las Vegas,
Yes, I remember that.
carry with him more armament than a small squadron of soldiers, can shoot off 5,000 rounds, can injure 500 people and kill 50, and you still do nothing about it. That tells you, yeah. When someone can walk into a gay nightclub and shoot 40 plus
Or
lesbian
a
and gay people,
cinema.
yeah, or a cinema, they will not. They just put it down to a madman or somebody who's angry. They're not going to change
I
that.
find it
America,
unbelievable that you can just walk into a shopping center in a store, just like can pick up whatever gun you want as if you're just buying shoes or anything
absolutely,
else.
absolutely,
Without any
yeah.
screening, without any pre-vetting, at least pre-vet these people.
At least screen and prevent. I couldn't
Yeah.
agree with you more. But
Make them go
no,
through training, psychological tests.
no, it's not going to happen in America, unfortunately. They are a gun culture. It is a part of their constitution. It is ingrained in American culture.
Or at least if they want to keep in the dead set on keeping the guns, at least pre-vet, not only at the before someone applies for a permit, they have to go through a psychological test, and every year they have to be assessed
I,
again.
I could not agree with you more. I could not agree with you more. That is what needs to happen. They need to be tested. They need to be psychometrically tested.
Big
Albeit I'm not
time.
a big fan of psychometric testing, but
And
there needs to be some sort of mental testing as to their capability to hold a firearm. But above all, firearms should not be accessible for anybody below a certain age. You know, as much as we have killings by adults in America, some of the worst killings are teenagers who, get angry and go and get mum or daddy's gun and go and wreak havoc on their fellow students. I mean, we're talking about 11.
historically, the shootings, for example, what is it? Back in 97, was it Columbine, something like this, in Oklahoma? It was historically made by those who carried by white people from privileged backgrounds because they were just bored. But now it's become a trickling down to all strata of society, and especially in the new, the as they call them in the US, the aliens, the illegals. Anyone can just walk in a store and buy it as if you're buying a mug. It's
Yeah, it's absolutely terrible, Lorenzo.
Mhm.
What is as I said, America isn't going to. It's ingrained in the Constitution. It's the First Amendment. It's the First Amendment, the right to bear arms, which made America the country it is today.
In the
Racism
US, yeah, you don't
and
feel safe. You can walk, you can just go, for example, to the bakery to fill up your car.
and get
You might
shot.
find yourself in the wrong place at the wrong time.
That's why my brother-in-law encouraged me to learn to shoot. I didn't want to. I didn't want anything to do with guns. He said to me, Trevor, you don't have a choice. If you're going to come to America 3 months a year,
Yeah, for sure, especially in the South.
especially, and that's where I go. I go to the South. I go to Louisiana. So
Oh yeah.
Mississippi, Alabama. I'm in the Southern Belt, which is
Wow.
lovely, by the way. Beautiful people.
Oh
The,
yeah.
let me make it straight. The average American is just a nice human being. But
Absolutely.
I don't have a bad word. And Canadians, wonderful, wonderful people. But at the end of the day, there's just an awful underbelly
A few
of
bad apples.
a few bad apples and segregation. And as long as people don't live together, then you're never really going to understand. You can't understand me as a black person just through working with me. You've got to live with me. So you go to America, everybody mixes in the workplace, and then they all go back to their little, their little enclave, the black enclave, the white enclave, the Italian, and that's a society will never gel. You'll
Yeah,
never
segregation
understand.
is never the issue, never the solution. For example, me, I'm an immigrant. My family, I was originally from Afghanistan. My father was one of the first people in Afghanistan back in the 60s to get a full scholarship for his undergrad and postgraduate to study in France. He was an archaeologist, geologist, God bless his soul. And when the Soviet invaded in 79, I wasn't born, but the communists, they don't like intellectuals. So you're rounding up looking for intellectuals to make him disappear. My father, at the time he was working in France, that was our ticket to freedom. And then I remember growing up in France. At first, they put us in what do you call it, like a little, all the immigrants in one area. Especially there were immigrants back then from North Africa and from Africa and from whatever else. But then because of my parents, they both worked, they were both educated, were able to get out of that and go to a more French neighborhood.
Yeah.
But I saw even as a young child, as as at 8, 9, 10 years old, that this is not the way to live. It's not an environment to nurture, to inspire, to uplift.
No, you still see that around the Gare du Nord now, where
Yeah.
all the immigrants are forced
Yeah.
around the Gare du Nord in Paris. They're very
Oh, it's
big.
a mess. It's an awful, yeah.
Really, really is. So still see it today. But yeah, you're like me. You made it in spite of, not because of.
And again, the environment we were raised, we're born, the parents we are blessed to have, they play an incredible role. My parents were both very educated, hardworking. My father was very educated, so he was always pushing us. I have 3 siblings, 1 brother, 2 sisters. Knock on wood, they're doing really well because they educated themselves. They work hard, and now in Canada they built a life for themselves. I'm very proud of them. Me, I'm the eldest, and as an eldest in my culture, maybe the
And
same for you.
I know
You
they're
have
proud of
to.
you as well.
You have to. I had to ensure that they were doing good. I had to support them. From
Sure,
the moment I could, I had to do that.
sure, absolutely, absolutely. And like you, I get along incredibly well with my siblings. They're all in America. So my sister is in America, my brother is in America. Unfortunately, my 2 brothers here I've lost, my younger brother and my elder brother I've
Sorry
lost.
to hear that.
Yeah, but I do try and spend 3 months of the year in America because my father is also there. So I do after the UK, I spend the next amount of time in the States.
Next time you go to the US, if I'm there, come to Toronto. Come to Canada.
Oh, I would love to come to. I went to Canada, but just for a day trip. I was in Detroit, and so I crossed over into Canada just to say I've been.
You know
So
where's the next World Cup in 2026? Canada, US, Mexico.
yeah, I pray I can afford it.
Well, if you come to Toronto, you have a place to stay, my friend.
Thank you so much. Yeah,
As I say in Spanish, mi casa es tu casa. My house is your house.
Oh, that's a bless you, sir. Yeah, fantastic. One thing my career has not left me particularly wealthy in my older years because I've looked after my daughters, and when I lost my wife, I've always looked after my children, and so they are my wealth.
Absolutely.
So, God willing, if I can afford it, I will.
Put it out there when you set yourself to do good, to inspire, empower, and uplift, God will bless you.
Oh, absolutely, Lorenzo, and you are a blessing to me, sir. And thank you for this.
Thank you, brother.
Wonderful, wonderful conversation and discourse.
But this is just the beginning, my friend. As I said, me and you, we're gonna do, this podcast went completely off script because I was supposed to ask you a series of rapid fire questions, all that, go to your background, your story, your business, but it went so off script because it was such a beautiful conversation. I didn't mind, I actually loved it. So we're gonna do quite a few. There's so many
Excellent.
topics we can devote entire episode just on them. Remember, one topic would be the evolution of football and racism in football in the UK. That's a massive
I'd
topic.
be so glad to have a detailed discussion with you about that.
Yeah.
Yeah, anytime, Lorenzo, anytime, because you know, I was again that first generation of black footballers to go in
John
and
Barnes. Wow, what a legend.
absolute complete legend, bananas thrown at him, you know, so many, Rio
Bruce
Ferdinand,
Grobbelaar, even though it was way before my time, but those are
yeah,
legends. They're eternal.
absolutely, Ian Wright, you
Oh,
know,
yeah. Oh, Ian
and
Wright. Wow. As a gunner, I should know that.
yeah, and Ian played for a team before he was fully professional, and he played with a striker called Danny Dias, and
Mm.
Danny was better than Ian,
He was
and
what, sorry?
he was a better footballer than Ian.
Oh, wow.
And even Ian will admit that. And there was a lot of talent that didn't make it, that just didn't get the
Because
opportunity.
of discipline, opportunity. Yes, yes, yes.
Opportunity. It's just all about opportunity. Um, you know, and also it's also about how you dealt with racism. Some clubs, Ian went to Arsenal, and I think they embraced him. But if you went to a club like Millwall or West Ham back then, you didn't stand much chance. You remember Clyde Best, the black player who played for West Ham,
I don't
and
remember him. No, it was before my time,
yeah,
but yeah.
yeah. Well, again, we will have this
Love
conversation.
that. Love. One question came to mind. You mentioned that you were approached in a way to sell your integrity. You saw other people did it, other judges, black judges. You mentioned that some of the black players that were more talented say than the one that made it. Do you think that some of these black players that made it, do you think at some level they had to, I wouldn't say sell out, but compromise in certain ways to get the opportunities?
I think it's very difficult for any person of color or any woman
Yeah,
to truly make it without compromising something along the way.
absolutely.
I
Paying the
just think it's
price for the success. Yes.
yeah, you pay a price for success, and and sometimes the price is high. I decided I didn't want to pay that price because success didn't mean that
Peace of
much to
mind is
me.
priceless.
Yeah,
Being able to
but
sleep at night, looking yourself at the mirror.
it is priceless, and oh, Lorenzo, that's a wonderful sum up. I have to look at myself in the mirror, and I have to spend the money that I make, and I want to spend it with a clean
The
conscience.
money you make, you have to be able, you have to look at it and say, yes, I earned it. I deserve it. Nobody gave
I
it to me. I
deserve
didn't
it.
do anything dirty or
Yeah,
nasty or unethical,
absolutely,
you know?
that's right. And I will do what I want with it. I didn't
Absolutely.
do anything. There's nobody going to bed tonight who's suffering because of my actions. Because
Indeed.
I know I went to bed a few nights suffering because of other people's
Indeed.
actions. Yeah, yeah.
Brother, what a beautiful conversation. Let's call it a day for this is part one.
Sure,
Uh,
sure.
if someone wants to connect with you, what's the best way to do so?
Right. My email address, which is tgordon, TGORDON, at my company name is Gordon French Associates, tgordon at gfasso.co.uk, or you can www.gordonfrenchassociates, all one word, www.gordonfrenchassociates.com. That'll take you to my website. Just type in your search engine Gordon, Gordon, French, FRNCH, and my website should come up, and you can get hold of me that way. Yeah, and people are welcome to contact me if they think I can give any assistance. Be great to
Absolutely.
hear from you.
Absolutely. I'll put those in the show notes and I'll reach out to you to send me all of your links and all that. Listen, Trevor, I salute you. You truly do with a heart. Keep shining your light, keep blessing the world with your presence, your impact, your knowledge, your light, your smile, your sense of humor, your everything you do, your wisdom. Stay safe, stay awesome. God bless you, my brother. Talk to you very soon. Let's make this a weekly show.
Definitely, Lorenzo. No problem at all. Yeah.
Take care, my
Thank you
brother.
so much.
As we say in Canada, have a fantabulous rest of the day. Take care.
You too. Thank you,
Bless you.
Lorenzo.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Speak soon.
Bye.
Bye-bye.